Succession is something that is very difficult. Moving from one person to the next is hard. It's a change, um, and oftentimes it is handled in a way that results in in problems. And it's the next person, the kind of successor, not ever living up to the person who was before them. And this is especially true when you're dealing with individuals who are very successful and very important. And this is partially why I personally believe that mentorship is a very important thing. You know, if we're not investing in the next generation that is coming behind us, then issues arise from that. This passage today, I think, is a very good example of kind of the positive side of that. You know, the story of Elijah and Elisha is very much one of a mentor and the person he is mentoring, and what that individual who's being mentored ends up going and doing, and how in many ways Elijah kind of lays out a real successor who can take over his ministry and continue ministering to Israel and administer in a way that is not much of a step down from Elijah. I mean, Elijah is considered one of the greatest prophets. Him and Moses are kind of the two that are up there. Elijah, not as much, but Elijah is not considered, a bad prophet by any means. He's still considered a great prophet. He just isn't quite at that same level as Elijah. And we do have a lot of examples of this. The sports world is the one that I kind of always go to. When you have a coach that's successful or a quarterback that's very successful, it's very rare that a team will go and find somebody that's new. And it's also very common that a lot of times these very successful coaches, anyone who kind of comes out of their tree, ends up just not being anywhere near what they were. Bill Belichick up in New England is an example of kind of that sort of negative side. There's kind of this tendency where individuals who are really good at something and really successful at something, they have a lot of trouble passing that on in any sort of meaningful way, and raising somebody up who can really take over for them and keep things going strong. And we do have, this is Super Bowl Sunday. There is a positive example here in Andy Reid. Andy Reid is an individual who has been talked about many times as being an excellent mentor. He has this coaching tree that has been very successful. There's been multiple individuals out of it who have won Super Bowls or have gone on to do very, very well in the coaching ranks. And this is something that's kind of noted for him. So that's kind of a positive example of when it goes right. So the big thing I would always say is, from this kind of lesson of Elijah and Elisha is that we should try to be a bit more like Elijah, a bit more like an Andy Reid, and really figure out and learn how to build up those who are coming after us. Because the reality is that you never know when your time in that role in that position or on this planet is going to come. You never know when these things are going to kind of come to an end, and the next generation is going to have to take over. The next person is going to have to take over for you, and setting the groundwork for that, I think, is something that is important to do in terms of leadership and just in being a responsible individual anyway. So I would encourage you all, to follow kind of that example of Elijah and be willing to, invest in the next generation, being willing to invest in people to come up and eventually replace you when the time comes. Because in doing that, we are able to strengthen, not just ourselves, but our churches, our organizations, all of those things around us. Amen. And now I'd like to invite you all to join me for our last worship song today.